Now I just wait. Now we wait for the stream to start, and then I can begin my rant. We just wait. Okay, come on, Twitch. I see YouTube's ready. You always take a lot longer. There we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome. As you can see by the title, this is going to be a very serious topic today. This is not going to be a nice, fun topic. This is going to be a serious topic. I ask you all, I'm going to start off and just ask, I hope you are all respectful to each other if you comment on this, if you're on YouTube. I hope you're respectful if you join in chat. If you are not, I will kick you from it if you are disrespectful to either me or someone else. Although, I'll let it pass if it's towards me, because you're allowed to have your own opinions. There's a difference between speaking your opinion and being a dick. If you can't tell, I'm very heated about today's discussion, because it is fucking ridiculous, and it kind of pisses me off how far I had to scroll through the news to find this story. That it took me a moment to even find this about Robb Elementary School. I can't even begin to speak words about it. I am so pissed off. Because not only is it ridiculous that it even happened in the first place and should not have happened, that these kids and these people lost their lives, but it is essentially frustrating when you go looking for the story, because someone else told me about it. Someone else told me about it. I didn't even know that it happened until after I was told. And then I was told about it, and this happened yesterday. This happened yesterday, and I understand a lot of places maybe not announcing it right away, because they have to get all the facts and everything and then report on it. So that I can understand. But this happened like 11 a.m. yesterday. 11 a.m. And I heard nothing about this until now. Basically 11 p.m. or 11 a.m. today. And there had been stories out for at least half a day at that point. And I'd heard nothing. And I'd been looking at the news yesterday because I'd been doing the streaming and stuff like that. I'd had stuff up for other things. I found so much information on the Kenobi series. I found so much info on everything else. On the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial, which, while yes, I am following that because I'm a fan of Johnny Depp and I'm interested to see how that turns out, that is not the most important news story that needs put forward right now on the front of the news page. You open up your internet and it's got all those news stories. Oh wow, and it just, it's crazy. I open it up and I know you guys can't see my screen, but I don't see a single goddamn thing for this story. Even after looking stuff up, nobody's talking about it. You have to scroll so far down to find it. It's ridiculous. Oh, there's Kenobi, there's Top Gun, the Amber Heard, Russia, that's an important thing as well, so I'll let that one slide. Dating app stuff, Marvel stars, all of this bullshit celebrity BS. I don't understand. I know that's just on like the news feed for everything, but that is not the most important thing that we should be talking about right now. I just find it absurd. For those of you that don't know, I will give a brief recap of what I am talking about and what happened. So this was at about, I believe it was about 11 a.m. yesterday. It says 11 a.m. Tuesday. Today's Wednesday. Yep, so Tuesday, yesterday. There was a gunman named, let me find it. I actually did have his name. Where did it go? I just saw the name. Salvador Ramos. Salvador Ramos went into Robb Elementary School in Uvalde. I may be pronouncing that incorrectly. Uvalde, Texas. Um, and he went into Robb Elementary, which teaches children 7 to 10 years old. 7 to 10. There you go. That's like what, second to fifth grade, if I'm remembering my grades correctly. But 7 to 10 years old. Went in with an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle and high-capacity magazine. He was 18 years old. 1 year younger than myself at the current moment. And he, not only did he go into the school and kill how many people? It was 21 people total. It was 19 children and 2 adults. That is an entire classroom's worth of people. Most classrooms are around that, if not a little more. That is almost an entire classroom of children. Dead. Dead. Just dead. Because this person was able to get their hands on an AR-15, and for whatever reason, decided that this was a good idea. Not only did they go into the school and do this, they shot their grandmother beforehand, wrecked their car, and then went in and did it. Abandoned their vehicle, but from what I heard, they crashed it and then entered the school and opened fire. There was a police officer that worked at the school that saw them. They were wearing, not only did they have the rifle, but they were also wearing body armor. And the police officer tried to engage them, but was unable to stop them. 2 more officers from the police department also attempted to stop them, but were unable to do so and called for backup. Several of the children have been identified. However, not all of them. And part of the reason for that is because of the dangers of these weapons. Like, if you go back to the Parkland shooting in Stoneman Douglas High School with Nicholas Cruz, right? You have this person going in with I believe it was also an AR-15 rifle, same weapon, seems to be their one of choice. Who went into Stoneman Douglas and pulled the fire alarm and then gunned down, I want to say it was murdered 17 people and injured 17 others. And then tried to plead insanity in court, which, because of his testimony, immediately fell apart. There was a whole video on that called "This is What Crazy Looks Like." He is in the thumbnail for it. And so you can go watch that if you want. That'll give you an insight into his interrogation. It's actually a very interesting video. Maybe I'll link that down below on YouTube if you want to go check that out. Students at Parkland founded Never Again, MSD, an advocacy group that lobbies for gun control. On March 9th, Governor Rick Scott signed a bill that implemented new restrictions to Florida's gun laws, and also allowed for the arming of teachers who were properly trained in the hiring of school resource officers. I have feelings about these things. I think the students getting together for that is a really good thing, and I think them trying to lobby for gun control is a really good thing. But the problem is, again, Governor Rick Scott signed a bill that implemented new restrictions to Florida's gun laws. But what about the rest of the country? This wasn't in Florida. This one that just happened was in Texas. Well, what's going to happen in Texas? Well, I can tell you what's not going to happen. What I would put money on the table that it's not going to happen is they're not going to do anything about it. Because here's another thing. I'm going to look it up right now. I don't remember the exact date, but here coming up very soon, there's the NRA, National Rifle Association, has a conference. Guess where? In Texas, where a lot of the politicians from around the area are going to speak. But guess what? They're not going to cancel that. They're not going to cancel that because, oh, there was just a mass shooting. Maybe we shouldn't talk about the goodness of guns in the same state where this just happened. Maybe we shouldn't do that. They're not going to say that. They're not even going to think about that. They're going to go in there. They're going to set up their little pony show, and they're going to, it's going to go around as business as usual. Doesn't matter that these 19 children and 2 adults, these 21 people just died, and that most of them were unrecognizable. That according to some of the parents and the law enforcement and whatnot, after it happened, these parents had to stay outside and wait to then come and identify their children, and they had trouble doing that. And that same thing is what happened. I believe it was with Parkland. I could be wrong. It may have been another American mass shooting. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't Parkland. Maybe it was another one of the many. But there was a parent in one of those others. I think it was Parkland. He was a father. And he had a daughter who went there, and she was killed in the shooting. And he spoke after, because he's been kind of a spokesperson with a lot of it, joining in some of the political talks, mainly with the Democrats, and talked about how, going in to identify his own daughter, he couldn't. He did eventually, but he had a really difficult time because of the devastation that these weapons have. I'm not a politician. I'm not a news reporter. So again, as I said in the very beginning, take everything I say with the smallest grain of salt. Because I may be incorrect on certain details. I'm not someone who does this for a living. I'm simply someone who has a platform. I have a very, very small audience. And I want to talk about it. Because I don't think enough people are. And I think that needs to change. I think this needs to be a topic that not as many people are scared of talking about. Not as scared of being canceled or whatever by gun owners and whatnot. I don't think all gun owners are bad. Okay, I want to get that out there. I do not think all gun owners are bad. I don't think the government should confiscate your guns. In fact, most of the legislation that's put forward, yes, there are some people who may want to take away all your guns. Okay, there might be some. But the majority of the time when this gun legislation is put forward and these, rootin' tootin' gun owners come forward and they're like, and the NRA, and they're sitting there like, oh, you're trying to take away all our guns. That is not what the legislation said. At all. That isn't what any of it said. In fact, that's not what any of the people have said either. It's just you hear gun rights are going to go down, and they hear I'm not allowed to have guns anymore. You're encroaching on my Second Amendment rights. I'm going to pull up the Second Amendment, please. Give me a moment. Let me pull up Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Okay, let's talk about this for a minute. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. I would argue, and a lot of people may disagree with me on this, but I would argue this. Let's make the argument a little easier. Let me make sure that I am understanding the definition of militia. A military force that is raised from the civil population to supplement a regular army in an emergency. Well, who does that sound like nowadays? Who does that sound like to you? Because it sounds to me like the police force. That is what the police force is for. The police is our militia. A military force, they have a lot of, they've got body armor, riot gear if they need it, bomb detection gear, K9 units. They are an internal military that is raised from the civil population. Those are just normal people. They go to school for it. They go to school to be a police officer. My father almost did. He didn't, but he almost did. To supplement a regular army in an emergency. That is the entire purpose of the police. If there is an emergency, you call 911, they arrive. All able-bodied civilians eligible for law or military service by law for military service, a military force that engages in rebel or terrorist activities in opposition to a regular army. They could. They could do so. They don't have all of the gear. They don't have tanks and whatnot, but they don't need it. They don't need it, to be fair. The police force is our militia. And so going back to the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia. I think the police force could use a little more regulation, but that is not the topic for today. That is not today's topic. That is an entire another topic. If you want to hear me talk about, I will on another day, and I'll probably get a guest for it, because I do have a friend who's a little more knowledgeable in these things than I am. But today is just a rant. That is why I did not try to invite that person. This is just me talking. Being necessary to the security of a free state, in this case, they're talking about the United States trying to keep a free state. You need a well-regulated militia. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is where the discussion gets really hairy, and this is where a lot of the argument stems from, is that right there. Keeping and bearing arms shall not be infringed. I feel like the Second Amendment needs an amendment made to it, and that is the problem. Because that's the thing about the Constitution. The Constitution was built as the groundworks, where everything else could be built off of it. The Bill of Rights was built as the groundwork, and we are meant to change it depending on our needs, and depending on the needs of the nation. And I think that's this. Let's go to another amendment and talk about this, okay? Let's go to the First Amendment and talk about the First Amendment and what that means, because I feel like that is, we can get a similar idea based on this. So, First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridge the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So let's talk about the First Amendment here. And it was revised in 1992, but that's the thing. Let's actually, just before I really get into that is another thing. And it also shows that the Constitution, or not the Constitution, the whole Constitution was revised in 1992. But my point is, you can do this. You can go in and make an amendment to change a past amendment. That has happened multiple times. But with the First Amendment, people argue that, well, slurs and things like that, protests by someone like, say, the KKK. People would argue, mainly members of those groups, these racist or whatever groups, because they are, and I'm not afraid to say that out loud, these groups would argue that the things that they say that are blatantly racist, the N-word, different slurs like that, towards different, usually minority groups, they argue that, well, that's protected under the First Amendment, because in some cases they are protesting peacefully, and they're, you can't abridge my freedom of speech. I'm not saying that I think it should be illegal to say those things. I mean, I think it should, but I don't think you can do that reasonably without infringing on this amendment, unless an amendment is made to fix that. I think there should be some repercussion, or something for this, to at least discourage it. Just at least to discourage that type of behavior. Like a slap on the wrist if you don't want to do something like arrest them. Like something, anything at all. And I think something like that, going back to the Second Amendment and shootings, I think something like that should apply to this as well. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. But why does the average person need an AR-15 for home defense? Because that's the argument. That is the argument. Home defense. Okay, and if you miss, you're going to shoot through that wall, shoot through the next wall possibly, depending on how close you are to it, and hit your neighbor's cat. You know, that's an exaggeration, but you get my idea. It's a semi-automatic weapon in close corridors, really tight corridors like that, in a home, which is a lot smaller than a school. You don't need an AR-15 or any kind of assault weapon like that. You want a weapon for home defense, get a shotgun. If you really want a gun, if you really, really want a gun, and it's for home defense, get a shotgun or a handgun. Now, can handguns and shotguns still do damage in a school shooting scenario? Because that is another argument that they'll make is, well, you're not allowing us to have these guns. Well, you know, that's a thing, that's a thing. But the thing is, yes, they can. They can do just as much damage in the wrong hands as something like an AR-15. But at the end of the day, one is, how to put this? How to put this? Let me backtrack a little bit. Because I think one thing that should be talked about is, what do I think could stop it? What do I think could fix it? Because there's all this talk about things about guns, certain guns are bad, but what do I think could fix it? Let me go through a list here that I found of, it's like, how to stop shootings in America, 10 strategies proposed to stop gun violence, and how likely they are to work. There are some here that say that they might not. So there you go. So let's go with this one. Assault weapons ban. Okay. So if we were to ban assault weapons, just keeping the highly lethal AR-15s and fully automatic weapons beyond the reach for the good and bad people alike, how likely would that be to work? Well, this says very likely. I'll give my opinion in a moment after I read through it. So the last federal ban on assault weapons was passed by Congress in 1994 to combat mass shootings, which fell significantly over the 10 years the law was in place. Though lawmakers didn't specifically define an assault weapon, quote unquote, they made 18 weapons illegal to manufacture, which did not affect the assault firearms already owned by Americans. After the law expired, researchers at the University of Pennsylvania expressed in a federally funded report that the ban's overall effect was unimpressive. Should it be renewed, the ban's effect on gun violence are likely to be small at best and perhaps too small for reliable measurements, said the report, which the Department of Justice commissioned. Bans on assault weapons can both reduce the mayhem from and perhaps even reduce the frequency of these lethal crimes. Professor John J. Donahue III, a lead researcher on mass shootings at Stanford University, said, "We see from diaries of the mass shooters that they see the AR-15 or some such as the vindication of their manhood and power and a vehicle for addressing their perceived grievances. Fixing the, quote, gun culture that steeps troubled and ineffectual men in the notion of redemption through violence and then makes the most deadly weaponry available to them, end quote, would have a direct effect on the rates of mass shootings," Donahue said. Okay, let's stop there. That was a lot of reading. That was all for the one thing of an assault weapons ban. So it has happened, as we read there, and it had very little effect. But there is the problem with something like, again, we'll say an AR-15. AR-15 is, again, as I said before, the sort of gun of choice of a lot of these younger men that are doing these shootings, or even not even younger men, just the ones doing the shooting. It's something that we see a lot. I mean, again, going back, this one that just happened, AR-15. Stoneman Douglas, AR-15. Let's go back for a second. Look at, let's go back to Columbine, shall we? What gun was used in Columbine? I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I have a guess. Okay, I'm slightly incorrect. So let's talk about this. Columbine was two 9mm and two 12 gauge shotguns. And but here's the thing with Columbine. Columbine, even though they were 9mm, one of them was a Tech 9 semi-automatic handgun, and then the other one was a High Point 995 carbine. So not automatic, not um, what you want to call it, AR-15s, but still dangerous weapons. Now that does kind of work, I guess, suppose against my argument of everything going on with it because. Sorry, I'm just reading something. Okay, my bad. I was just reading through something, but about the Columbine, and there were some people from Columbine that were talking about the one that just happened. Shotguns and handguns can still be used in these scenarios, and I think that kind of comes down to another one of the how to stop things. Um, First of all, banning high capacity magazines because that is what has been used in the past ones most of the time, especially with the school shootings. There is a high capacity magazine. Now, can I just say real quick? You see a lot of these weapons, like the AR-15 and whatnot, and the thing that they describe it as is a semi-automatic hunting rifle. Not everywhere. You don't see that description everywhere, but you do see it in some places, and that is the argument for some of the people that own them, is that it's a hunting rifle. Go hunting with it. Okay, you're going hunting with it. Let me just do some research real quick. How effective is the, let's say, AR-15 as a hunting rifle? I could be completely surprised here. But the AR-15 is not ideal for the hunting and home defense uses that the NRA's Keen cited today, though it can be used for hunting. The AR-15 isn't really a good hunting rifle. Its standard .223 caliber ammunition doesn't offer much stopping power for other than small game. And people, apparently. Because, we're seeing that now. Also, it's mostly used in schools, so they're a lot smaller than a grown adult. It's so, first of all, that argument is ridiculous. Something else, by the way, more research. Give the CDC or American Public Health Association, American Medical Association, give these groups more funding. God's sake. I mean, they have been proven to be able to diagnose mental health issues using their research. It has been a thing that has been proven. So why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you take all that defense budget and move it over into that field just a little bit of it, like 1%? What is that? Still like $10 million? I mean, hold on. No, I'm gonna look this up. I'm actually going to look this up. How much? What is the current U.S. defense budget? No, not business budget. That's not what I typed in. Current U.S. defense budget. That is what I wanted. Okay, this is a little outdated. It's a little outdated. On 22nd of July 2021, Senate Armed Service Committee approved a budget of $25 billion. There you go. The National Defense Authorization Act budgeting $740 billion for defense was signed 27th of December 2021. So let's just do some math here. We'll go with the low number, $25 billion. Okay, $25 billion. So 25,000, 25 million, 25 billion. And we'll just 1%. $250 million. $250 million. That was even more than my joke estimate. I said 10 million. That is 25 times that. Do you know how absurd that is? I get it. A lot of the stuff that they make in the military, the tanks and whatnot, very expensive. So expensive. But for the love of fucking everything, for the love of the fucking children, take some of that defense budget and put it towards something goddamn useful. I mean, going with the 740 billion, that is $7 billion toward research on the gun control. And who knows if they'll even need all of that. Probably not. I mean, what is the current CDC budget? I don't know if that's exactly how it works, but just looking. Okay, the Center for Disease Control Prevention budget request for 2023, for fiscal year 2023, includes $10 billion in discretionary budget authority. Right, so yeah, it's like, long story short, I'm having trouble finding an exact number, but their request is like less than 1%. It's probably more like 0.0001%. No, that's overshooting it by a lot, but it's less than 1% of the 1% that could be allocated from the defense budget to give to the CDC to fix this. Like, they have money to spare. They have so much money to spare, and they just keep asking for more. You give them a little bit, and they just keep asking for more. It's ridiculous. So the CDC giving them some extra money would be awesome. Universal background checks is a big one, though. Making sure that anyone with a history of extreme violence cannot own a firearm. I do not see any problem with that, because here is a big thing, okay, that is not talked about enough. The Second Amendment was created after the Revolutionary War, where they needed a militia to fight against the British Army, to fight against tyranny. Yes, we may face something like that in our time. It is a possibility. But the problem is that, one, there's no guarantee. And so then there's all these guns in circulation for a militia that we may not need. Also, it has been proven that in certain areas, the police force, which are the militia I spoke about before, will stand up and stand with the people in certain cases. So that's another thing. Now, okay, I just saw an ad on the side of the screen. I'm not going to get into that, but there's a whole thing about the COVID thing still going on, by the way. In case anybody's forgotten, we're still in a pandemic. It's not over. I mean, the cases are actually rising right now. I mean, state of COVID today. Let's look at today, shall we? Let's look. COVID-19 cases map with live updates. Let's look at the United States. We're waiting for it to load. I'm just waiting for it to load now. Okay. Perfect. Yep, got a couple different maps here, actually, to show different things. I actually wouldn't, I don't want the map, I want the graph. And, one moment. Part of the reason I'm bringing up COVID now, going from one issue to another, is because COVID is the next, well, I almost said the next big thing, but it's been a big thing. Yeah, that's not wanting to load. That's probably just because I'm streaming at the same time and it doesn't have the resources for it. But let me just talk about something in a moment for a moment. And it's kind of going into a similar vein of things. Why is nothing changing with gun control? Well, why is nothing changed with the people that refuse to get the vaccine and that say no to masks? Why is nothing changing there? It's because those very same people, okay, I know someone who works in a hospital. They work in a hospital, directly have worked with COVID patients, okay? They have directly worked with people that have got COVID, but they also deal with other people as well, not just COVID patients. They deal with everyone. They've worked in a hospital throughout the entire pandemic, working really long hours. They're in the hospital. Someone comes in with sore throat or whatever, and they're like, "Hey, we need to do a COVID test for you." The person's obviously against it, and but they eventually get allow the COVID test, and they say, "Well, I'm not going to get the vaccine because," quote, by the way, quote, "they're trying to inject me with the virus," end quote. This grown ass man or woman, or someone in between, you know we're inclusive here. This person was like, I don't wanna don't want to get the vaccine because they're going to inject me with the virus. They're going to give it to me. So they don't get the vaccine. They also refuse to wear a mask. They are like, okay, sore throat. We got to wait for the results to come back. Just go home, be safe, try to stay home. Or they held them. I don't remember specifically. This was a story I was told about a week ago. This was, by the way, from a week ago. So there you go. It wasn't like months ago. This was about a week ago. And this person then gets their results back and it was positive. And then they got really sick. Like, really sick. They didn't die. But this was a week ago. This is going to sound really bad, but that still could happen. But they refused to get the vaccine because they were worried about contracting the virus. But then they didn't get the vaccine. And they still contracted it. It is the same people that refuse to do anything about guns because they want their guns. I get it. Guns are cool. I think guns are awesome. I love guns. Okay? I'm a gun nut. I don't know like every gun that's ever been made, but I love guns. I love playing shooters. I would love to go shoot a gun in a range, in a safe place, with a gun that is safe and where I'm not firing obviously at another person, where there's a target at the other end. It is a safe environment. That is what I want. I do not want to just go fire, guns in the woods or guns in my backyard or at another person for home defense. Because if somebody comes in your home, this is going to come as a shock to some people. If somebody comes in your home with the intent to harm you, okay? They come in, say they have a gun, say they have a knife. Let's say they don't even have a gun, they have a knife. Yeah, you could try to do something about it, but your life is not worth that. And even if you have the gun for home defense and you shoot the person, that will fucking haunt you. And if it doesn't, because it's always said, well, the person obviously had mental health issues. That's why they went and did the shooting. They obviously had mental health issues. If it does not bother you shooting another person, you have a mental health issue. Because there are people that go off overseas to war, okay? They are trained to be a soldier and they kill people. And that bothers them. I'm not saying it's universal. There are some people that it does not bother, but there is a difference between a soldier and a regular civilian. As a soldier, you are trained to kill. You are trained to do that thing. Yes, it may bother you, but there are some people it may not. Some soldiers it may not, because they know that that's what they're there for. But just a random person in their home, in the safety of their home, Somebody busts through the door. You grab your gun and you shoot them. You can't tell me that's not going to bother you a little bit, at least. Maybe not in the moment because of the adrenaline, but later. I find it very hard to believe that wouldn't bother someone. But they just needed their gun. If somebody busts in your home, just look at them and say, what do you need? Just honestly look at them and be like, what do you need? I'll help you carry it out. Because your life is not worth that. And I'm could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure if you shoot someone, regardless, you kill someone, you're going to jail. Regardless of if it was in your home. Because there is self-defense. But if they, for any reason, deem it wasn't self-defense, then you're going to jail. Maybe not for very long, but still. Depends on the sentence and the justice system. That is a whole nother topic for another day. Probably on the same day I talk about the police. If you guys like these little talks and rants that are more political, tell me. I'll do more of them. I'm fine with that. I have my opinions. Again, I am ignorant. I am an ignorant fool. I'm an ignorant buffoon that plays video games, jokes on the internet, and plays D&D. I am an ignorant buffoon. But I have my thoughts, I have my feelings and my opinions, and what I know is that what happened at Ross Elementary School, I will say its name again if I have to get people to pay attention. Ross Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. Probably saying that wrong, I apologize. Those kids didn't deserve that. Because what did they do? They were like second graders. The second to fifth, they were elementary school. And they didn't deserve that. They didn't. And the shooter's dead. He got out easy. Because he deserves to rot in a cell for the rest of his life. But he's dead. Because he got killed by police. Because they had to. A lot of people would be angry at the police for killing them. For killing that man. Because he was. He might have only been 18. But he was a man. A grown-ass adult. And he had a gun. Because I'm going to be honest. My thoughts on it? Some people would say, well, not 21 yet, so technically not a full adult. If you are old enough to go overseas, if you are old enough to join the military, to hold a firearm, you are old enough to, in a situation like this man was in, be charged fully. And that is why I believe that is the case. There's no juvenile anything. This one, they were 18. They picked up a gun and they shot people. They deserve to be tried to the fullest extent of the law. I am not a religious person, but since they're dead, I hope that there's a hell so they can go to it. Because they deserve nothing less than to burn for all of eternity for what they did. Because that's fucked up. I don't have much else to say. I thought about doing this as just a podcast episode and releasing 2 in the same week, day after another. But I wanted to be posted everywhere. I wanted to be on YouTube, Twitch, all of my audience to see it. I'm not going to ask for a subscribe. I'm not going to ask for a like or anything like that because that is not what this was for. I just want to know, and I want to know that you guys, at least if you didn't know about this event, that you do now. And that maybe you're a little more informed and start thinking about these things. Because I'm going to be honest, if you are someone who can vote, please do. If legislation comes through to maybe change this, to stop this, vote for that. If you know that somebody is trying to get into office that has legislation in mind to stop this, why wouldn't you vote for that person? Yes, if they're a terrible shitbag person and that is their only redeeming quality and legislation, yes, do not vote for them. But if there is possible legislation in place that might help this, Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you try? I mean, we aren't politicians, unless one of you watching is a politician. We are not politicians. Here in this community that I'm building, we're gamers, we're D&D nerds, we're whatever. We're nerds. That's the kind of community that I have right now, anyway. But regardless of that, if you're old enough to vote, your vote makes a difference. Speak out. If you have a channel, speak out. Get the word about this out there. The more we talk about this, the more we make it normal to talk about this, the more traction it can gain and things like that, and we can get that out there because it shouldn't be happening. This shouldn't be happening regardless. And I know that my one little stream here is not going to make a lick of difference, but maybe if you guys talk about it too, you guys talk about it on your own time or put a link to this if you don't want to, then maybe something can be done. Maybe. I have nothing further to say. Thank you for listening to me rant. That is mainly all this was. I hope at least one. I hope that if anybody watches this, if anybody does, because I don't know that anybody will. No guarantee. But I hope that if anybody does, if you weren't aware of the situation that you are now, and that maybe you do some own research on your time and things. Maybe I'll do more rants like this in the future about different topics. Hopefully, I don't have to revisit this one. But based on the trend, I'm gonna have to, because there's one last thing I want to say. One final thing I'd like to say before I leave. If nothing serious was done at a nationwide level after the Parkland shooting and other ones of its nature, where the majority of the students and people that were killed were white, why would these groups that don't care anyway about children like the ones that were killed in this, that are up here, I could be wrong on this, and I'm not trying to sound ignorant, I'm just speaking from what I'm seeing, they look to be of Hispanic descent. Why would these groups like NRA, things like that, a lot of these traditionally Republican groups, why would they give a shit? Because they haven't anyway. All the stuff when former President Trump was in office about, the border and trying to stop the people from coming across the border, the putting people in cages. Do we remember that? When people were put in cages? Is that still happening? Because I don't know. I will say I don't know if that's still happening. But if we remember that at all as a nation, these people don't care anyway about people of that descent. And that's most of the people that were killed in this one that I'm talking about, mainly at Ross Elementary School. Why would they give a shit anyway? They didn't before. Or sorry, not Ross, Robb Elementary School. I misspoke. But why would they care anyway? They will. They will. But we will. We will. And I'm going to do a thing real quick, because I would just like to show all of you the face of one of the people. And I'm going to leave you with that as I leave. I'm going to leave you with that. This is the face of one of the people that died. This was posted yesterday at 11 p.m. by Dylan Collier. He died. And his family has confirmed him dead. He was a 4th grader. And he is just one of many. And it makes me fucking sick. Thank you for coming to my rant. I was going to do an actual stream today, and I might still. But we'll see how I feel after learning about this. Because I don't feel like it anymore. I think this will be my stream for the day. I was going to do something where I play a game, but I cannot in good conscience go back to business as usual doing that. Just streaming, doing things. At least today. I cannot do that in good conscience. Not after this. I'm going to post this, or at least a link to this, everywhere. To this story and to this stream. Not because I'm trying to get views. I do not give a shit about the views. I don't care if you like, I don't care about any of that. I just want this to get out there so more people see it. Because I had to dig to find it. If I had not done so, I wouldn't have known. It's like there was one that apparently happened before this. I'd have to look, honestly. There was apparently one that happened right before this one, within like 10 days. I didn't know about it. I didn't hear about it. And I've looked at the news. It's just buried under all the celebrity bullshit. Stuff about, the Johnny Depp trial. Stuff about, was the Met Gala or whatever it was that happened, that pompous shit. There's so much that just pushes these important stories down. All right, I'm going to end it before I keep going because I will just rant for another hour. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll